Hi all, my name is Jonathan McKnight. I am the Director of Operations for Momentum 360, and I'm excited to talk to you today about my new blog on capturing massive virtual tours. Let's get into it.
What's going on, guys? If you haven't yet, go to our YouTube channel, click subscribe, and click that little bell too so you get notifications whenever we post a new video. You will be the first person to know. Thank you so much for the support, and now the video you've been wanting to watch.
Really, if you're in the virtual tour industry long enough, you're going to walk across the opportunity to quote on a massive job. And really, it can be pretty daunting, but it shouldn't be. If you've been in the industry for long enough and you've got enough tours under your belt, you can essentially break down massive virtual tours into smaller ones. When you break them down into these smaller chunks, they're easier to process, easier to complete, and easier to satisfy the customer with. As we have seen here, this is my new blog. We're going to go over some of the key points. However, I would absolutely encourage you to dig in and read into the actual blog itself. There are some important considerations when setting expectations and quoting these massive virtual tours. One of the first questions you're going to get, maybe even before you discuss prices, how long is this going to take? And that's a really valid question. There are a lot of different considerations when capturing a virtual tour in regards to the time, how deep the tour is going to be, how comprehensive, what exactly you're capturing, what time of year is the institution or space in that would make it easier or more challenging to capture a virtual tour of that space. So there are a lot of different considerations when it comes to TOS, time on site, that are important. It's always important when it comes to massive virtual tours to add the qualifier that things could take longer. If you're used to scanning 3,000 to 5,000 square foot residential spaces and all of a sudden you walk across an opportunity to scan 100,000, 500,000, a million square feet, which will happen, you just need to understand that a lot of the problems, a lot of the issues, and a lot of the things you're also good at are going to be expanded just by virtue of the fact that we're scaling up the size. When it comes to shooting methods and options for capturing massive virtual tours, you really need to keep things linear, but most importantly, you need to keep things consistent. Working with off-the-shelf options is probably going to be easier. Working with the Z1, for example, is likely your ideal choice depending on budget. Some of these massive tours have the six-figure budget to put in, and where it's plausible and feasible to use a DSLR with a wide angle lens on a panoramic head. Is that the best way to do it? Obviously, of course, okay. But sometimes these massive state colleges, they don't have $175,000 to put into a virtual tour, but they do have 50,000, and so okay, a Z1 works. A DJI drone making aerial panoramic works. It all depends on what the customer or the client is willing to invest in. Sometimes people only have a $5,000 budget, a $1,000 budget. Okay, well then instead of doing the entire university, we're just going to focus on one dormitory, your top earning college program, and say sports, because that's usually very profitable. So it's just all about keeping expectations. Shooting methods, really, when it comes to massive virtual tours, let's take, for example, a university, which is going to have several different buildings. You need to make sure that you are finding efficient ways to connect these spaces on an exterior basis. And one of the best ways to do that is with drone. The DJI drones, a lot of the other manufacturers and models have a automatic 360 panoramic mode where the drone will just spin on its Z-axis and capture data. This is an incredibly powerful upsell. It's definitely something worth looking at, but even if you can't get an upsell for it, you should do it anyway, because two reasons. One, it makes it insanely easier to navigate the tour. Two, it's a good show off to the customer. It's a really good way to leave a nice taste in their mouth at the end of the tour when you say, I also got these few drone panoramics. I know I was going to upcharge you, an extra $5,000 for this feature. I wanted to provide extra value. What do you say about a 5-star review? You can sort of negotiate and go back and forth. And it just makes things easier to get around. And then a sneaky third reason would be that when you go to show this to other clients, it's easier to upsell later on. Massive virtual tour equipment really doesn't need to be insanely expensive. Yeah, you can go out there and you can get $20,000, 360 cameras, but it's not a good option when you have, say, for example, a university or another large space like this, like a mall. You really need to make sure that you're able to operate the camera in a way that is agreeable to the conditions that it was designed to be used in. So, for example, if you're trying to use a Matterport Pro 2 camera in a incredibly crowded with moving people, that's not going to work. You're going to need to go for, and if that's the conditions that the tour has to be shot in, then it's going to have to be still 360 panoramic images. It all depends on what they're able to do. Obviously, when it comes to logistics, you're going to want to shoot this tour. Again, let's just take the university, for example. You're going to want to shoot this tour over the summer where there aren't students on campus, or let's take a mall. You're going to want to shoot this overnight, between 10 and 1 a.m. or whatever, just to make sure you don't have any people in the tour. So it all depends on the right equipment you need. Another thing that's really important when it comes to right equipment is batteries. You're going to need a lot of them, and you're going to need a way to power things up. It's important to have a very accurate idea of how much battery power you have on you, how much you're going to use while you're actively shooting, and what strategies you're going to use to get more power. So, for example, let's say you're doing 1 million square feet and you're doing 360 still panoramic images and not 3D, which would be advised. This is going to be a multi-day tour. You're going to be able to go back to your home, your hotel room, whatever, and recharge your batteries. But you're still going to need to figure out to make sure that you're able to operate through the entire day and you don't have to leave hour 7 when you could have 10 potential hours to work or 8 potential hours to work just because you've run out of battery, which looks very unprofessional. Now, a lot of professional photographers obviously know that. Duh, I'm going to bring enough batteries. But really, it is possible to overdo, but it'd be a little tricky to overdo. So you might as well shoot for the moon. Another thing that you're going to want when it comes to virtual tour equipment is you're going to want a dolly. You can go on Amazon and you can buy a dolly for your tripod that'll make it easier to move around. Now, you need to be really careful because these moving parts can lead to higher accidents, but it's going to make a lot easier on you, the photographer, to get your equipment around if you have it on a dolly. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, it's a Z1. It weighs 5 ounces tops. What's the matter? Well, you're going to want consistency in height. You're going to want consistency in a lot of different things. And also, it's so much time that, yes, it may be easy for you to pick up the tripod and move it, pick up the tripod and move it, pick up the tripod and move it over a 5,000 square foot tour. You want to crank that up to 500,000, 1 million square feet. It's going to come off a lot differently. Also, it looks cool. It looks prepared. It looks professional to the client. And that's something that you are going to want to uphold as you go through and do your tour. Another really important piece of massive virtual tour equipment that you're going to want is a body camera. The main reason is because if something happens on the job, something happens to your gear, you have documentation. You are able to get insurance to be a lot more agreeable when you have thorough documentation like this. But the real reason that you're going to want a body camera is because it's going to be easier to then go back and assemble the tour. Yes, obviously, ideally you're going to be shooting in sequence. Ideally you're going to be shooting, and so with that it's going to be very easy to manage and sort of figure out what's next in the tour when you're building it. But if you have a point of contact showing you around, if you happen for whatever reason to shoot something out of order, having a body camera is invaluable, and it is really, really important to go back and to make sure you have that captured. If you're using Matterport, definitely check out matterfix.io. You really are going to want to send your gear over to Mike over there and have him give it a look over. If you are using these high-end proprietary machines and they fail on you, which happens right here, Matterport Pro 2 over my shoulder, then you're going to want to make sure you have backups. So that includes the Ricoh Theta Z1. Buy a second one. If you're shooting a tour that you've quoted for, $75,000, buying another $1,100 Z1 to make sure that you're able to complete everything on time and with zero issues is going to be very important. Virtual tour location preparation, obviously important. If you have a mall, if you have a school, if you have a large outdoor space, you're going to want to make sure that groundskeeping isn't doing any work. You're going to want to make sure that maintenance isn't doing any work. If you have the opportunity to have people work from home that day, you're going to want to go ahead and do that. Do you need to consider what time you shoot? If it's a mall, if it's a working mall, are you going to need to shoot overnight? Are you going to need to shoot early in the morning? There are just lots of things that you are going to need to ask the point of contact. One question that I like to ask my clients when I'm shooting massive virtual tours is, what can you think of that might be on your property today that you wouldn't want in your virtual tour? And that is usually going to elicit a couple good answers that you can sort of start to tease out and see what goes down that path in terms of making sure things are out of the way. But this also implies the opposite. Well, we need to make sure that there are certain things in place. Like what? Well, if we're shooting overnight in a mall, for example, we need to make sure that we have access to all the places that we need to get to. We need to make sure the lights are on. Same things when it comes to a school, for example. You need to make sure that the people who have the right keys to the right rooms, the right areas are present and aware of the virtual tour being shot when it's being shot, so you're able to move quickly and effectively. If you've quoted the price out so that this virtual tour capture is going to take 1 week of your time, but in reality the point of contact isn't prepared and it's going to take even more time, then that's something that you are going to want to consider writing into your contract in order to really drive home the fact that they need to be prepared as you intend to be. The point of contact orientation is actually really simple, really straightforward. Make sure they know what's going on. Make sure your customer understands what's going on. This ties in very heavily to overall expectations for the client. You're going to want to make sure they understand and know what's going on so they feel confident in the process themselves. When it comes to massive post-production expectations, clearly, obviously, it's going to take a very long time to complete the post-production work needed for some of these 6 and 7 figure square foot size virtual tours. And you really need to let the client know that. I am very apprehensive about quoting times when it comes to tours like these. There's always things that come up, but you should really have a good understanding of your workflow and what you're able to put out. And you should basically under promise and over deliver. Figure out a way to delight the client. If people need, their tour back in 1 week flat, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you have the infrastructure in place in order to complete that, and also make sure that you are charging accordingly. When it comes to execution, just like any other large, physically demanding enterprise, obviously speak with your doctor to make sure that you are physically capable of undergoing such a venture. If you feel safe in that, make sure you're well rested, make sure you're well hydrated, just sort of regular run-of-the-mill things that you would need to do to get ready for a job. When it comes to file management, you're going to want to bring a laptop with you. Bring something that you're going to be able to go and double back and check to make sure you don't have corrupted files, make sure you can clear space off of your cameras and other devices, and to make sure that you're engaging in proper file management. You're going to want to break things down at the very least by day, but ideally more by building or by floor, or any other way that's going to allow you to be more thorough and effective in your post-production. Ultimately, when it comes to massive virtual tours, there's a few important things to keep in mind, but easily the most important thing that I could press on to anybody who has the opportunity to quote and or shoot a massive virtual tour is to charge what it's worth. This is a massive amount of time that needs to be undertaken by you. If you have a school, for example, so you have a state college, and they want a virtual tour, you can fully expect that this virtual tour is going to help make them an international institution by allowing them to present themselves all over the world by virtue of the benefits of a virtual tour. So you need to go and you need to understand how much they're charging per year. And you can very easily ask your client, okay, well, you're a school, you're looking to increase the enrollment of your students. How many spots could you fill before you said no more for me? And if the answer is, 150 students at $25,000 a year, you need to understand that this virtual tour is going to be with them for more than 1 year. They may turn you and say, oh, no, we're going to want to, renew it in a year. But you better believe that this virtual tour is going to get them 10, 15, 20, 30 extra students per year at 25 a pop. So obviously a lot of that needs to go to the school, but to turn around and charge $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, even like $50,000 for a virtual tour for a university, for example, is too low. $50,000 is a deal, and they better be coming at you with multiple locations. Like you've booked every single state college in Virginia. I don't know, I'm just pulling something out of nowhere. And they're actually going to give you all, 5 of their locations at $50,000 a pop. That is the only time. There is no breakdown for virtual tours in size. It doesn't get cheaper the bigger you go. That doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody stop? If it's just going to get cheaper and cheaper as they go along, eventually they get to a point where they can get gigantic, ultra mega sized virtual tours for less than a penny per square foot, which is inappropriate. It is non-representative of the value of the tours, and it's non-representative of the amount of work that goes into actually making these. In conclusion, don't be intimidated. If you don't think you can do it, that's fine. Partner with somebody who has the experience. There are companies like Momentum 360 who you can partner with to make sure that you're getting everything you can out of this deal. You can partner with others in your area. It is really important to consider that if you think you're overwhelmed or that you think you might have issues, get a second shooter. It's better to, absolutely crush a job and maybe split with another local photographer, for example, so that you're able to put this in your portfolio and go get more work like this. So you have a better understanding, so you get your feet wet. That's all I have for now. If anyone has any questions, obviously they're more than welcome to email the Momentum Operations team at momentum360.ops@gmail.com. That's momentum360.ops@gmail.com. Again, my name is Jonathan McKnight. I am the Director of Operations with Momentum 360. Thank you for stopping by and listening to my blog on capturing massive virtual tours. Thank you for your time and have a lovely day.